Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you.
Hurricane. Mom, isn't that where Grandma and Grandpa are? Maria Vargas pointed to the TV where a large map was showing the islands in the Caribbean Sea. Look right here below Cuba, Mom instructed, pointing at the TV. That's Jamaica. They're helping to build a church in a small village. The weather reporter on TV pointed to the map. Partly cloudy with only a small chance for rain in our area tonight, he said. And we are lucky. Look what's coming up for some of the Caribbean islands. He pointed to a big circle of white clouds over the blue ocean. This is Hurricane Cosmo. It's getting stronger and moving toward the northwest. Yo-Yo stopped chewing. Daddy, what's a hurricane? She asked. A hurricane is a big storm over the ocean with winds that blow faster than we drive in the car. More than 74 miles an hour, Chris added. We just learned that last month in school. Right, Dad said. He pointed at the TV. Cosmo is just a tropical storm. It's not strong enough to be called a hurricane. Why did they call it Cosmo? Maria asked. Weather forecasters name each tropical storm and hurricane just to help keep track of it. I think Cosmo is a nice name, Yo-Yo said. Chris frowned. Dad, do you think Cosmo will go near Jamaica? There's no reason to worry about that, Dad said. The storm may not get anywhere near your grandparents. Maria looked at Chris over her glass of juice. She knew he was going to worry, just like she was. Later that evening, Maria stepped into the kitchen to get a drink of water before bed and bumped into Chris. Hey, what are you doing? She asked. Shh, Chris hissed. Look. He pointed into the living room where their dad was watching TV. The news was on again. Hurricane Cosmo is really stirring up the water in the Caribbean, the announcer said. Forecasters aren't sure where it will end up. I guess we're not the only ones who are worried, Maria whispered. The next morning, the news was on when Maria woke up. She plopped down in front of the TV before she even ate breakfast. Hurricane Cosmo is quickly becoming one of this year's strongest storms, the announcer said. Oh, no, Maria stared at the screen. Chris came in, rubbing his eyes. What? What's happening? He asked. Maria pointed at the map on the TV screen. Hurricane Cosmo is headed straight toward Jamaica. They reported the news to their dad as soon as he got home. I'd better try to call Jamaica. Maria and Chris stood nearby, listening to every word. Finally, he hung up. Well, I talked to a pastor in Jamaica, and he says the whole island is on alert. He talked to Grandma and Grandpa this morning, and they're staying on the island. Will they be safe? Chris asked quietly. Dad nodded slowly. I'm sure they'll find a place to ride out the storm, someplace safe. Maria was almost too worried to go to sleep that night. The next morning, as they headed out the door for church, she grabbed the morning paper off the porch. The biggest headline on the front page said, Cosmo aims at Jamaica. Dad, look! She handed him the paper. He sighed and handed it back to her. I know, honey. I tried to call the island this morning, but all the phones there are out, he said. Come on, let's go. By the time Maria and Chris got to the shoebox, she was almost too upset to listen to the lesson. Mrs. Shue said, It would have been scary to live in Egypt when the plagues came. I'm sure even people who believed in God were frightened, but they knew God was in charge and that he would work things out for the best. Maria raised her hand. My grandparents are in Jamaica, and they must be scared now. Why? Jenny asked. Hurricane Cosmo, Chris answered. It's hitting the island right now. Willie's eyes got big. Is it a bad storm? Maria nodded. Hurricane Cosmo has winds over 100 miles an hour. The newspaper says that it will knock down trees and houses all over Jamaica, and the waves will be 20 or 30 feet high, so all the land near the beach will flood. And it's raining so hard that lots of other places will flood too, Chris added. The phones are all out already, and probably all the electricity is out too. Grandma and Grandpa are there helping to build a church for a small town, Maria said. Do you think God will protect them? Mrs. Shue smiled. That's what our lesson and memory verse are all about, Maria. God promises to protect us. We can trust him to do what's best for us. Shall we have a special prayer for your grandparents this morning? They all bowed their heads. Father in heaven, Mrs. Shue prayed, please be with Chris and Maria's grandparents in the storm. Send your angels to protect them from the wind and the rain. Thank you for promising to always be with us. Amen. Chris and Maria felt better. The next day, the news reported, shortwave radio operators are reporting a lot of damaged homes. Electricity is out all over the island, and there seems to be a lot of flooding. Shortwave radios are kind of like walkie-talkies that can be heard all over the world, Dad explained. Some people must be using them with batteries. Just then the phone rang. Maybe it's Grandma, Yo-Yo said. Maria rolled her eyes. All the phones on the island are out, Yo-Yo. She can't call us. Mom answered the phone. Yes, this is. You did? They are? Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for calling. She hung up the phone and turned around with a great big smile. That was a man who has a shortwave radio. He talked to a radio operator in Jamaica this morning. Grandma and Grandpa are fine. What? Are you sure? Everyone had a lot of questions. Mom held up her hand. All I know is Grandpa talked to a radio operator in Jamaica, gave him our phone number, and asked him to try to send us a message. They stayed inside the new walls of the church during the storm, along with most of the people from that village, and they're all safe. God did protect them, Maria said, just like he promised. Let's say a prayer and thank him. So they knelt down and did.
The story you have heard today is from the Shoebox Kids Bible Stories, written by Jerry D. Thomas and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.